Hey everyone, welcome to the show. And with me today is Leah Franqui, who's a college counselor with Collegify. Leah went to Yale University where she majored in theatre studies and she went on to do her master's in dramatic writing from NYU Tisch. Leah has won several awards in screenwriting and playwriting, and some of her plays have been performed across theatres in the United States. So it's an honor to have Leah on the show today. Leah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
You've been doing this mentoring and guiding for several years. So tell me, how has the landscape changed, since the number of Indian applicants have shot through the roof?
Well, I definitely think, colleges are seeing far more Indian applicants than ever before. And in fact, international student numbers are growing in general,
Right.
Which is great. I think that especially for American universities, they're very excited by that trend. It also makes it a lot more competitive,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it just means the standard keeps getting higher and higher.
Right. So not only academically, extracurriculars, the entire
absolutely.
profile needs to be sort of bigger and better.
And more. I think that I look at students now, I think, God, I don't know how I would have gotten to college today,
Same here.
I just think, wow, I hadn't started a business already when I was 16. How did you do this?
Right.
But they are sort of looking for applicants who are proving their passions in very active ways.
Right.
And because the standard in India is sort of rising for foreign applications, now you have to have already started that NGO and been that soccer star and done that. So I think that international students are facing the challenge of competing with their American peers in a new way. Indian students, at least the ones I've worked with, they really struggle to express themselves in sort of clear, cogent ways.
Right.
And it's much harder to get to know an Indian student from their application. So often an Indian student presents like a resume,
Right.
which is a sort of incomprehensible resume. It has like 20 certificates for dance and they've never had a dance performance. And you're like, I don't know how to read that. And then I've seen a lot of Indian students really struggle to express themselves in writing.
Right.
But that's honestly one of the major avenues that they have available to them to express themselves. I also see that Indian students are a lot less aware than their US counterparts of the competition and what it means. Part of that, which is unfortunate and unavoidable, is that they can't visit colleges unless they've had an opportunity to travel.
Yeah.
So they don't know what the schools are like, and they don't have a sense of liberal arts learning, which is the guideline for most schools. Most American schools have some kind of idea of holistic or liberal arts learning. They have a harder time talking about the schools specifically.
Right, because they don't know the touch and feel of the
Exactly,
school.
and they don't sort of address the concept of community in the school or environment of the school. When they talk about why they're interested in the school, a lot of what they talk about are the statistics, what they've read on the website.
Since you mentioned a lot about the writing and that's your area of focus, tell me, as a student is writing the bundle of essays that he does, what are some of the things for him to definitely keep in mind?
Well, one of the things that I think is really important that I stress to students all the time is to remember that writing is a process, and that because there's not necessarily a ton of preparation for writing in a lot of Indian schools, it might take a long time to get to an essay, especially sort of your central personal statement or Common App essay or a statement of purpose for graduate program. And so I think that a lot of students sort of feel this urge to be product oriented, and they write a first draft and then they're like, here, look, I've written a first draft.
Right.
And it talks a lot about the grades I've gotten and the exams I've taken, and those are all my best accomplishments, and here you go.
Okay.
And they're sort of bewildered when I'm like, all right, well, we can't use any of this, but good try, let's start again. One of the big things I always tell students is nothing in your essay should be information that I could have gotten from your resume.
Sure.
The essay is a chance to give the school a real sense of who you are.
Right.
Especially with undergraduate essays, they're really looking for what kind of person you are, how you think about the world, and what you're going to add to this school community. How will you fit in with the community they're trying to build? Are you a Tufts student or an NYU student or a Cornell student, and do you have those qualities that they are looking for in the next generation of their community?
Right.
So often when I start working with students, they feel this need to be really impressive, and what they think is really impressive are their sort of like
Accomplishments.
quantifiable accomplishments, right? But some of the best essays I've seen have been about the relationship somebody had with their grandparents who lived with them. And the lessons they learned and the difficulties it was to live with somebody of a different generation in a changing India. Those are amazing essays, or essays about students coming out, essays about students challenging themselves, essays about students learning to cook can be beautiful. I mean, anything that is really an experience you can reflect on that you feel shows something essential about you. And then if a student does actually have an activity that they're incredibly passionate about, that they really feel like the trajectory of my life has been the trajectory of me playing football, or me learning guitar, or me doing Indian classical dance, then that is a strong essay if you can find the sort of root of the student underneath it. One thing that we get so many essays on is Model UN. Students talk about Model UN all the time, how essential, and I'm just like, unless you have made a new kind of Model UN and have patented it, you better not be talking about Model UN. I don't. Or your debate team conference. Or your engineering team conference. Those are the three that I get a lot from a lot of Indian students that have to be like, no.
There's also this notion that different colleges look for a different profile. Is that true?
It's absolutely true. And really what they're looking for there is fit. You know, I think even the term profile building makes it sound like this very sort of corporate professional thing. Really, it's about trying to find the right fit. And not every school is the right fit for every student, no matter how high profile it is. Because unless you're really highly specialized, or there's that one professor you've just got to work with, most schools have most programs.
Of course.
If you're looking in the top 300 schools in the United States, they're all going to have what you need.
Good, I think.
In terms of giving you the basic educational structure you're looking for. So it really becomes about fit and about school philosophy. Honestly, like a Wellesley student isn't a Smith student, even though they're both girls' schools, small, in the Northeast, right? Like on paper they look really similar, but the philosophies of the schools are different, the kind of student who's attracted to them is different, and the kind of alumni they create are different. So trying to understand what the philosophy of the school is also about what am I really looking for in a college. Not just can I be accepted anywhere, or can I get into these top 10 schools that we read about on some online report, but is this going to be the best place for me? Well, a lot of it has to do with, all right, beyond the subject, how do I learn? Do I learn best in a lecture? Do I learn best in a seminar? Am I learning best in a small environment? Do I want to be in an environment of endless options? Do I feel like I really could use some nurturing? Do I want to be in an urban environment and have the city be my campus? Do I want to be in a small town and really feel super isolated, but like in that wonderful college bubble? I think those are the basic questions that you should start with. And then, like, the student to teacher ratio is a big one. What students say about their schools. Every school has a forum. And once you start combing through those, you start to see, wow, like the only really happy students are the kids in the applied physics department. But I really want to study political science. Maybe this isn't for me. Or it seems like everyone's really discouraged from studying abroad, but I really want to spend that semester in Paris. So maybe that's not the right fit for me. So it's about more in-depth level research.
Absolutely. And the big versus small debate just never seems to get enough attention.
Exactly.
It probably could be a deal breaker.
I think what's really hard too is that it's really hard for a lot of Indian students to even imagine an American college experience, period. Because most people they know around them will have had an Indian college experience where the size of the school might not be as important because you're living at home. So a student who spent any kind of time living outside of the home, even if it's been like a 1-month summer program, they are so much better prepared to understand their independent needs. It's like for an Indian student looking at like, okay, well, what's the international profile of the school? How many Indians are going to be around? How close is this to a major city? How important is it for me to be close to relatives? How important is it? How important is the weather? These seem kind of petty, but they will actually totally dictate your college experience.
Another thing I find students constantly struggling with is how many colleges should I apply to? Which ones should be the right fit? Which ones should be reach colleges, safety colleges? There's a whole lot of terminology. So could you help us decode that?
Sure, absolutely. It's just a vocabulary issue, honestly. So every student has a sort of to use this term, profile, right, that they fit into. And that's the total package, right? Their scores, their extracurriculars, their standardized testing, their grades, everything, right? And I think that a lot of Indians get very caught up in, and a lot of international students generally, they get very caught up in the SAT score, because that's what the school puts out there. Yes. The SAT score isn't everything, right? It's really one part of the package, and I'm not just saying that, it's one thing. You know, the SAT is just one part of it, but it's often the part that's most visible because it's the one thing that a school can point to and say, well, this is a quantifiable range that we can give you. And you're looking at those quantifiable composites, like your standardized testing scores and your grade point average. If you're right in the mid-level to bottom level of that, that might be a reach for you, right? If the admissions rate is fairly low, that might be a reach for you. And then you're looking at the schools that are sort of right in your range. Those are your, like, they're not your safeties, but they are your good fits.
Yes.
And those are schools you feel like, yeah, I have at least a 50% chance of getting into that school, right? And then your safeties are the schools that you feel pretty confident you're going to get into.
Right.
So in the breakdown of those, if you are extremely committed to going to college in the United States, then you want to have at least 2 or 3 safeties that you can say, hey, I really feel like I'm going to get into one of these. Because chances are you might not get into one of them, or even 2. So you want to have at least 3 of those. You want to have 3 to 4 right fits, right? Schools that you're like really passionate about. You're like, yes, I could see myself here. I think I've got a good shot. Great. And then you, depending on what schools are exciting to you as reaches, you might want to have 3 to 4 of those.
Okay.
Now, applications cost money, right?
Yeah.
They're expensive. I would say 10 to 15 schools is a good range.
Okay.
I think anything more than that,
It's overkill.
It's overkill.
Yes.
Anything more than that, maybe you haven't chosen the right spread.
Also, not only money, you've got to put in the effort writing.
You've got to put in
each
the
college
effort.
Is an individual.
You've got to do the research. Can you really see yourself at so many places, right? At that, and schools do talk to each other. They do communicate. Admissions officers do know what's going on at other schools. So if it gets applied to like 25, 30 schools, they're like, wow, you don't really care about any specific school. You're just trying to get in anywhere. That can actually hurt your chances.
Okay.
So I would say doing the research and really having 9 to 12 schools that you're really passionate about, that you're really into, that's a better bet.
Okay.
And generally, I would say the biggest, the most important thing is every school on your list should be one you could see yourself at, including your safeties.
Right, of course, and it hurts the chances of your high school if you keep applying and refusing to.
It absolutely does. They stop looking at that school, and you've taken the place of somebody who really wants to be there.
Sure.
You know, your safety school is somebody else's dream. So figuring out a list that really feels like no matter where I go, I could be at a great place, that's good for you, that's good for you mentally, that's good for everyone.
Sure. Leah, the cost of an American education is really high for an average Indian. Yeah? And they're always looking out for scholarship and aid. And so where would you like to point them in that direction?
One thing that's really important for them to be taking a look at is, are the schools need blind?
Right.
So if a school is need blind, they will accept you, and then they'll figure out a way to fund you, right? If the school isn't need blind, and not many schools are, unfortunately, then your acceptance might be contingent upon the amount of aid that you ask for.
Right.
You may be as qualified as anybody else, in fact, more qualified, but you will be penalized, and that's a shame, and it's one of the big negatives of American education, I can say, as someone who went through it. There are often schools that do merit-based, like they just really love you as an applicant, and you don't even really need the money, but they'll give it to you. What a lot of Indian students find, though, that even when they get some aid, it can often not be enough.
Sure.
And that can be really difficult to deal with. You've gotten into your dream school, they've even given you some money, but it's not quite enough. Right. There are certain schools that really pride themselves in their financial aid. A lot of those schools are really competitive schools, and they have huge endowments, and they're really able to. Generally, state schools will have a sort of lower, like state schools can be a little bit cheaper.
Right.
But it's one of the big negatives. I know it's one of the big drawbacks for many Indian students is the price tag. And that's why the UK can often be a really great fit, because UK schools can be cheaper.
Cheaper, and 3 years.
3 years, you're paying less. Although if you're in London, cost of living will be a lot higher.
Yeah. Hey, I hope you enjoyed watching part 1 of a 2-part video series titled College Admissions. Look out for part 2, where Leah Franqui talks about a liberal arts education, the interview for US colleges, the importance of extracurricular activities, early action, early decision, and the Yale and NYU profile. Please click the subscribe button below, like me at facebook.com/ChetChat101, follow my Twitter handle ChetChat101 or at Instagram ChetChat101. Please leave your comments in the sections below, and if you'd like me to feature any particular college, please let me know. Thank you.